Okay, then. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see your faces. It's been a while and we return. I want to thank everyone who made an extra effort to donate to Oramid Bar in the time before I left. As Richard wrote, and I want to thank Richard for all of his efforts. Things are getting more and more difficult for us to make our budget, and so people really came through. Many people came through, and it really helped out. I hope that going forward, people will keep that in mind when they can, when they are giving tzedakah, when they are giving charitable tax deductible gifts, that they think of us. So thank you, everyone. Um, I would like to, I want to dedicate the study today in Bill Thumb's memory. It was his birthday yesterday, correct, Rita Claire? Yeah, apologies for not calling, jet lag. I just didn't have a lot of energy, but so we dedicate this study today to Louis Nishmato Shel Bill in raising Bill's soul upward, raising ourselves upwards, and in the background, of course, is the horrible war, which I will refer to as I have people in Israel constantly asking me, how is my community handling things? They all expect me to talk about the rampant anti-Semitism that we're suffering here in Palm Springs. And I'm sorry to say they seem disappointed when I tell them that we're not directly suffering. I'm not, at least, and most of the people, most of you I talk to, I know certainly that it's out there. I know it's on campuses, college campuses, it's on social media, and it's on many of our minds, but it doesn't directly affect what we do here in Palm Springs, thank God. Um, in fact, the opposite is true. I feel that from our Christian colleagues, our all the different congregations that Orami Bar is has an ongoing relationship with, we have only support for us as human beings, support of us as Jews who feel strongly about the state of Israel's right to exist, while at the same time can allow for the compassion and the rights, compassion for and the rights of Palestinians. We're going to get to that in today's text. Ech lo, as we say in Hebrew, how could we not, especially with fresh on my mind, and one of the names in the lists just jumped out at me today. And so we're going to do a deep dive on one of the names that we have here. But where are we in the book of Joshua? Because I know that it was many weeks ago since we last met. I mean, a month or a half probably. We're talking about the division of the land, the breaking up of the land into different parts, the tribes, the lottery. A lot of this echoes what we had in the book of Numbers about the division of the land. And here it plays out. And one thing struck me today that I'm not sure in this way it struck me until now. You have this blueprint for the life of the Israelite people. We know in our way of critical study that it's a blueprint that was developed. I'm talking about the five books of Moses, the Torah. It was a blueprint that was developed over hundreds of years in different places, in different schools of thought, the priestly school of thought, the Deuteronomistic school of thought, um, others, poetry, ancient poetry. Got the background from beforehand. You got the looking towards the future. You've got so many different things in some scholars' views. You have the exile itself after the first temple was destroyed is influential on the books of the Torah. That's debated in the circles of scholarship. But you have all these kind of things, but still it's a blueprint of sorts. And the book of Joshua, the way it presents itself is, well, this is the dream come true. This is it happening. The Torah said, when you get to the land, you shall divide the land in such a way. I'm just picking out one particular thing. And boom, that's what they're doing. Now, it doesn't matter that I don't necessarily feel this is historical, in that Joshua, in the time of Joshua, they were at Shiloh and and they all got together to make this happen, to designate. In fact, I'm very much influenced by Shmuel Achituv, because that's the commentary that I use. I've shown you before. This is a modern Israeli critical commentary from a wonderful, wonderful series called Mikra Israel. And Shmuel Achituv's commentary from the 90s is, I mean, I don't think I've had anything in English as up to date as this, but it has a sensitivity to to rabbinic literature, as well as many Israeli commentators have that are sometimes less so in the non-Jewish, many Jewish commentators have, I suppose the non-Jewish. And Achituv keeps coming back to the fact that there's so many different sources of the book of Joshua. We've talked about that. But this particular source, which we're reading today, came from the time of King David. And we'll see why in a few minutes, why today he says that. So and that's very early for biblical literature to be dated at the time of David. Even a list like this is relatively early when it comes to modern critical scholarship. But still, it reflects a time which is already during the kingship. It's Davidic. We'll talk about what that means afterwards. Okay, all right then. So were there any comments or questions that people think, because I'm sure during this time we didn't meet, you were all going over your notes and re-watching all the videos, the YouTube videos that we record, and reading everything you could about the book of Joshua. Any questions that people have before we go forward? I was joking. I know you weren't doing that. Well, Richard was, but everybody else for Richard wasn't, because Richard was so bored during this time. Okay, then. Why don't we go ahead? If you don't have the sheet, it's in the chat box. You can download it quickly, and we'll be doing a lot of screen sharing later. But for now, let's just look at our pages. Manny, if you would read the first two verses.
The family heads of the Levites approached the priest Eleazar, Joshua, son of Nun, and the family heads of the Israelite tribes, and spoke to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan as follows. God commanded through Moses that we be given towns to live in, along with their pastures for our livestock.
Okay, this is the introduction to this particular chapter, which mostly deals with the Levitical cities, and there's an addendum that's stuck onto the end that we may not even get to today, and this is based on Numbers 30. So when the author here says, the writer says, this is God commanded through Moses, puts those words in Eleazar, the son of Aaron's. Eleazar is Pinchas ben Eleazar, the son of Aaron's, the father of Pinchas, in his mouth. He's referring to Numbers chapter 35. Numbers chapter 35. And this is what I meant before, is that this is the Torah, the way it was commanded, playing out in reality, at least according to the way the record as we have it here. The other thing is they were in different places. If we remember, we read about different battles in different places, but here they're back at Shiloh. That seems to be, that is the center for the book of Joshua. If you will, that's the temple, the temporary temple site, sanctified site is in Shiloh. Okay, Jackie, you up for reading today? No, okay, but it is good to see you with us. Richard, if you would, 3 to 8.
So the Israelites, in accordance with God's command, assigned to the Levites out of their own portion the following towns with their pastures. The first lot among the Levites fell to the Kohathite clan. To the descendants of the priest Aaron, there fell by lot 13 towns from the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Simeon, and the tribe of Benjamin, and to the remaining Kohathites, there fell by lot 10 towns from the clans of the tribe of Ephraim, the tribe of Dan, and the half tribe of Manasseh. To the Gershonites, there fell by lot 13 towns from the clans of the tribe of Issachar, the tribe of Asher, the tribe of Naphtali, and the half tribe of Manasseh in Bashan, and to the Merahites, by their clans, 12 towns from the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, and the tribe of Zebulun. The Israelites assigned those towns with their pastures by lot to the Levites, as God had commanded through Moses.
Okay. Any comments or initial reactions?
What happened to, didn't the family of Nadav and Abihu get anything?
Yeah,
No, they're not alive, but
yeah, it doesn't come up here, and that's an interesting question because in in other lists, in other genealogical lists, when somebody dies, like I'm thinking of course, of Er and Onan, Judah's sons, it says they died, but there's somebody in place of them.
right.
But I guess that Nadav and Abihu, I don't think they had any progeny, right?
It doesn't say. But I
Yeah, it
would
doesn't
assume if
say.
they were old enough to be priests, they probably did.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the probably in your comment is based on. If there's something that you know that I'm not thinking of, other than just seichel. It could be just with common sense. But I am influenced by rabbinic literature. One of the reasons that's given for their death is
Mhm.
that they refused to get married. They said none of the women are good enough for us. Now that's not the pshat, right? Not the that's not found in the simple meaning of the text. Of course, I'm influenced by it, but look at that's the beauty of our study. I think the beauty of our study, and that's going to be the point of the basic part of our of what we're going to do today, is the fact that we're dealing with multiple layers, and layers is seeing it in a linear sense, as if there's an earlier, later layer, as if it's an archaeological dig. We're talking about so many different things that come into our what we say. So if you said before Malka, well, if they were old enough to be priests, they were probably married because in your common sense of how this thing works, sure, they're not, if they're 18, they're ready to get married, right? You don't want these boys to be running around without wives. And then I'm influenced by what I see. We don't know, but the fact that it's not here would lead me to believe, and this is already not so much this seems, I think, is objective, is that because they're not mentioned means they had no families, they had no
Mhm.
progeny. So I guess the simple answer to your question would be mine would be because they had none. Yeah,
Mhm.
as unfair as that is. Yeah. Anybody else? I know this looks boring. I know this looks, but I'm going to make it interesting. Give me about 3 or 4 more minutes, okay? All right. So, Malka, would you read the next section?
9 to 19.
Mm-hmm.
From the tribe of the Judahites and the tribe of the Simeonites were assigned the following towns, which shall be listed by name. They went to the descendants of Aaron among the Kohathite clans of the Levites, for the first lot had fallen to them. To them were assigned in the hill country of Judah, Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, together with the pastures around it. Arba was the father of Anakites. They gave the fields and the villages of the towns to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his holding. But to the descendants of Aaron the priest, they assigned Hebron, the city of refuge for manslayers, together with its pastures. Libnah with its pasture, Jatir with its pasture, Estemoa with its pastures, Holon with its pastures, Debir with its pastures, Ain with its pastures, Utah with its pastures, and Beit Shemesh with its pastures. Now 9 towns from those 2 tribes, and from the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon with its pastures, Geba with its pastures, Anath with its pastures, and Almon with its pastures. 4 towns. All the towns of the descendants of the priest of Aaron, 13 towns with their pastures.
Okay. I don't suppose anybody notices this, but can anybody tell where Aaron's land is in which tribe? Somebody's got some noise in the background. If you got the radio or TV, please do us a favor and mute. Thank you. It's a little bit hard to say. So it's from the tribes of Judah, mostly Judah, and the center of where Aaron's family itself was Hebron, which is very meaningful for David. And then you've got Benjamin and Simon. Simon is considered in many cases to be swallowed by Judah, so it's almost the same as Judah. And Benjamin was the other part of royal territory because that's where Saul is from. In other words, there's a connection that the Aaronites, that is the priests who were to become the top priestly family, not the Levites, but the priests themselves, the Kohanim, their land is close to the seat of government. And what Achituv mentions here is that you couldn't write that until Davidic times. So it's often hard to pinpoint when a particular scripture was written, and we don't know how late it was, but it couldn't be before. So I think he says it was in Davidic times. To me, that seems a little bit, I'm less sure about giving late times here. How do you date time? Our classic case, I think that we talked about maybe the first time we talked about dating scripture was when many of us were studying the book of Daniel together. And towards the end, you've got this vision of Daniel is being shown, this heavenly vision about which corresponds it corresponds exactly to what had happened in the 2nd century BCE. So we know that it couldn't be written before then. Other things that we might know from external sources of different nations that overtook other nations, that you can't date something before something we know from other outside sources. Until when? Well, that's also, there are other things, but I don't know how we can say that it's in Davidic times, in the time of David, but certainly from Davidic times. And it makes sense that the chief of the priests, their land, their places would be close to the seat of government, of the royalty. What we didn't talk about until now is that why should they get cities at all? It's kind of obvious, but anybody care to remind us?
Or to have a separate tribal area.
Right, because God is their nachala, their legacy, not their inheritance, right? And so a question comes up. I'd always thought in my mind that these Levitical cities, these priestly cities, were only for priests and only for Levites. And Achituv makes the comment that it doesn't mean they were only. It means that the tribes in which they lied, wherever they were located, room was made for them. And then he says something also, I don't know if there's any basis for it, but it makes sense. There must have been neighborhoods of these priestly families, right? I'm always reminded in this kind. I always thought of it was just priestly. Has anybody heard of the island of Jerba? Spelled with a DJ. Do you know it? Do you remember anything about it, Ella?
Yes.
I know that there was, when I was in Israel in the 50s, somebody was on the Machon from Jerba. I think it belongs to Tunis.
Right. And Corinne, do you know anything about Jerba?
Yeah, I saw how you say that reportage on French TV about Jews in this is World War II who were saved on the island of Jerba, but who had to give all their gold to the Nazi so that their life could be saved. They stole all the gold of the people there in exchange for their lives. But some were deported, I think.
Right, and they were relocated to a particular village near Kiryat Gat. I don't remember the name of the moshav. We went there to visit when I was in Israel in 1972. We were taken to all sorts of interesting places, including downtown Gaza. I had a wonderful educator, Chaim Perry, really one of the most important educators of the state of Israel, who's done amazing, amazing things over the years. And we went to Jerba. The interesting thing about the island of Jerba is that all the Jews were priests, were Kohanim. It was an island of Kohanim. Now, for those that are not familiar, when I say Kohanim, it's the plural of priests, and priests in the Jewish tradition, the Orthodox Jewish tradition, and in some cases conservative, but mostly the Orthodox, they have a different status. They're called up first to read from the Torah on Shabbat morning or a Monday or a Thursday. They're asked to lead the grace after the meals before anybody else, depending on whether it's in the land of Israel, which is every day in the morning, or whether it's outside in the diaspora, which is just on the holidays. They will bless the people with the priestly benediction from the bima, from the altar, if I can use that word right in this case. So they don't they don't intentionally make, from an Orthodox point of view, don't intentionally make themselves impure through the impurity of death unless it's a close relative. So they don't go to funerals, they don't go into cemeteries, unless, of course, it's one of the immediate relatives of theirs. That's the priest. And so here you've got this whole island where all the Jews are priests, have they have the lineage from priestly families. And I don't remember the answers, but of course my question was, well, how do you do the aliyot, right? Only the first is supposed to go to Kohen. And the halacha, at least the halacha that I knew, the Ashkenazic halachas, you only call a Kohen for if there's no Levi for the second aliyah. So the first and second aliyah, you don't call a different Kohen for the second aliyah, because then somebody might say, oh, what was wrong with the first Kohen? Is something wrong with him? And so these kind of intricacies, but anyway, that's just an interesting thing. Now, why did I get there? Because that's where my mind went. I don't know how it was. I didn't take. I didn't think of look. I should have looked up Jerba, the history, how it came to be that it's just priests. Is it from the Hellenistic period? I mean, how did that happen? That one island was filled with just Kohanim, and I think of these cities being like that. But where I'd like to go now, unless there's any comments or questions, is the third line before the end, the place called Anatot. Anatot. And I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into is the name Anatot familiar from anybody from a biblical point of view? Yeah. Jeremiah is from Anatot. Yirmiyahu is from Anatot. And that features in the narrative parts of his prophetic book. And Jeremiah was a priest, so was Ezekiel. They were both priests and prophets. My guess is that he wasn't actively involved in the service. I didn't check it out. I would imagine one can tell, but he is the son of a priest from Anatot. It's a priestly town, and so in that way it's famous. But it's also famous for those of us that lived in Jerusalem, and those of us that have been aware politically from the 70s and the 80s about the occupied territories and the politics of that. Now, what do I mean by that? It's not just giving them back, not giving them back. It's not just, well, Oslo is a huge part of it, but it's also where were demolitions happening? Where was I involved as a soldier in securing an area? It wasn't. It actually. It was never in Anata, but I knew where Anata was. I was stationed in that area near what maybe some of you know as Male Adumim. I was stationed there for a long time in a tank unit, and because there was no wars going on this was in the last few years of the 70s, there were no wars going on. It was before the Lebanon War, but there was what we call ongoing security issues that we were expected to do, not with our tanks, in command cars or on foot and things like that, sometimes with a tank. And so I knew the area, I knew the map. We had that was part of part of our soldiering.
Keep your hand up.
And it was so the area of Anata, I'm going to show you on a map where it is, and then we'll talk about it. But first, Klaus, go ahead.
It seems that the Levites are being broken up into all kinds of places, cities and lands, and is that on purpose or because they serve the communities, or is it just the way it happened? Is there anything contiguous about the lands that they do have?
No. So that's an interesting question. That's a really good question. I hadn't thought of that, but I think the answer to me is clear. One could be cynical and say because maybe there were a threat, so let's break them up, right? Let's spread them out through the land. I thought maybe that's where you were going, but it's in order to serve the different areas. There are local temples everywhere. We're led to believe, because of the centrality of the cult in the book of Deuteronomy, which is a much later book that talks about after there was only, at least in theory, one temple in Jerusalem. There was supposed to be only one temple where the ark was, the Ark of the Covenant was, that there were no other temples. But the rest of the Hebrew Bible teaches us all sorts of stories about local temples, local holy spots, and the Levites were the ones that did the stuff. In some cases, the priests, the Levites, it's not clear everywhere what that distinction was. really interesting passage towards the end of Judges that we looked at that year we did the Judges, where it talks about a place in Dan, when after Dan located to the far north in the Galil, where they hired somebody. It says, the text says, Ben Menashe, and the nun is suspended. And everybody understands that the nun was added afterwards, that really his name was Ben Moshe, which teaches us, and there are other sources as well, but this is the major one, teaches us that there was a Mosaic line of priests as well. That was pushed aside in the final version of the Torah. It's not Moses, it's Aaron, his brother. Really fascinating stuff. But in this case, it's not contiguous, whatever the word was, because they're supposed to be serving everybody around. Another thing was, this was land that was given up by the tribes themselves. So I think there's an idea of dispersing it amongst all of them, or many of them. I think all of them. I didn't count, but I think all of them, in order to make it fair, because this is land that they had to give up on. And it wasn't just urban land in a village, if we can call a village urban. I know it's not, but a place to have a house. It also says that their pasture land. It emphasizes there was land for their cattle as well. Yeah. Okay. So back to Anatot. Let's take a look at it on a map. This is going to get a little funky just because I've got so many windows open that I tried to key. Let's see, we're just going to go start here. We won't look at this map now. We're going to first look at this. Okay. Can everybody see that? Yes?
Yes.
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 Let's.
Yeah.
All right. Look familiar? Somebody asked a few weeks ago about the green line. Maybe it was when I was talking from Jerusalem. It's not green on this map, but that is what's known as the green line, right? Okay, and it doesn't include the Golan Heights, and it doesn't include what traditional or Israelis and Jews that lean to the right will refer to as Judea and Samaria, what others refer to as the occupied territories of the West Bank. And it doesn't include the Gaza Strip, of course, and that's what, again, to give you just an idea, I'm sure you've been seeing maps all these last months since October. Okay, so now you can see how close it is to Jerusalem. In fact, it is in, I believe today, the modern Anata is technically inside the Jerusalem city limits, although, yeah, I think so. I think parts of it are.
Oh, that's where it is.
So this is it, Anata. Anata in Arabic, Anata, I don't know where the emphasis is, but there's an ayin. And Anatot in the Hebrew Bible. And I want to use this as an example. I was stationed in the mountains over here. So this whole area was our responsibility, very often, to be backup troops and things like that, and why I know the map. It's not so far from French Hill. The Jerusalem neighborhood of French Hill is right here, right? So now you see this line here. I was going to say it's the wall, but it's not the wall. It's which one? I guess they don't have the wall anywhere. This is the road that goes down from. Many people will go down to get to Jericho and the Dead Sea. Okay, so you have an idea where it is over here. Now I want to use this to talk about. No, did something else. Oh. Apologies. I'm missing something I've saved. Or would it be? Here we go. I put the Wikipedia article on Anatta into a Word file so I could mark it up with red. But if you'd like to see yourself, what I want to do today is, because we're studying it in the book of Joshua, it's not a central point of what I study today from the in the context of the of this chapter of chapter 21. But this to me is a really good way to explain just how screen sharing is paused, just how complicated things are. We'll go back to it. Just how complicated things are. I tried to give this over to those of you that were on that session I did whenever it was. I'm a little bit mixed up in time. Last Monday, I think. Just how complicated things are for me, how not black and white, how on one hand accusing Israel of genocide is just such a narrow, misinformed way of looking at the reality the way I know it to be true. And on the other hand, that I stand with Israel absolutely, with that there is no justice on the other side. The Arabs, and they're always called Arabs as opposed to Palestinians. There is no Palestine. The Arabs have had any chance, and all chances they've been given to make peace, they've rejected it. Those kind of two things. It's so far more complicated than that. And one of the main questions is from where do we get our information? Many of you will read the forward. You read the Times of Israel, I hope. I think it's relatively balanced when it comes to Israel. Many of you read the Jerusalem Post, which I understand has gone through a bit of a transition. Haaretz, probably less of you read, maybe because there's also a paywall, although it's more to the left coverage. We know that no coverage is absolutely objective. So that's one place. Others get their information from things that come across their social media tab, which somehow I have avoided. I don't get news on my social media. I don't really know where that is. Maybe Madeline will explain it. I'm not complaining, believe me. I get news from people who I know, right? And the rare ad about a particular shirt or something they know I'm interested in. That maybe I made the mistake of clicking once. But where do we get our information from? From CNN or from Fox or from MSNBC? From people that we communicate with on a direct basis. There was somebody on the call on Monday who wrote in the comments, almost every Israeli believes that the war is just and needs to continue to the end. And I said to this man, I've never met him before. I've seen his name a few times on our things. I said, I don't know how you would know that. How does one know something like that? I'm not contesting that it's a majority, but it's certainly not the vast majority. I know because I was there, and in the streets there are tens of thousands of people demonstrating against the government to stop the war right now because of the hostages. And I, believe me, with all my experience of Israel, I had a hard time. Every once in a while, I had to check with somebody. I'm sorry, are they left wing or right wing? I'm not sure who's who. There's so much anger, so much protesting. And again, I'm not complaining about it. I'm not. This is the reality in Israel, but it is so unclear. And while we could say, well, you know what, then I'm not going to read anything. I'm just not going to get involved. I don't think that's it. I think one way to do it is to understand the complexity and just to be careful and to be modest going forward. I do know that what many of us get from local Jewish organizations is not the reality that I know to be true. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's false. I'm not saying something. I think it's part of an overall consensus of establishment Jewish organizations that for various reasons feel that this is the story that this is the narrative that should be displayed. I want to use this example of how do we get our information. Many people will look to Wikipedia. We've spoken about Wikipedia before. It is a mass effort. Many people contribute to every article or entry in Wikipedia. And so first I just want to look at this one, and I cut out a little bit, but this is the title is Anatta. So as you'll find in a Wiki, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not showing it to you. As one will find in a Wikipedia article, there are these button points, right? So first of all, it's an ancient place, but we knew that because we're studying the book of Joshua. It's a Byzantine place. That means second half of the first millennium Christian place. Ayyubid period. I'm not an expert of the different Arab periods, but I do know the Ottoman Empire, which came towards the end of before the 20th century. The British Mandate during the 20th century. The Jordanian period, because after 1948 war, that area was, and I guess I will say it was occupied by Jordan. It wasn't assigned to Jordan, but just from you won't hear that in the Palestinian narrative. And then from 1967, the Israeli and Palestinian authority period. That already tells you something about who edited this, right? It is not the final word in the editing of this article in Wikipedia was not a mainline or a norm or a right-wing settler group. I'm just using that as an example. They wouldn't write from the Israeli to the Palestinian Authority period. Okay. Then we go to this lovely little section, sanctuaries. So there is a Saleh and Rumia sanctuary and an Abd es-Salam. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Local administration, references, bibliography. I know this isn't the format that you're used to, but this is what comes out when so I could show it this way. And then you've got that section on the side that you often have with geographical or other locations where there's a picture. There's a nice view here from 2008. For some reason, the red dot didn't come out when I cut and paste here, but you already know where it is. And you see how this is presented, right? It's very much presented as with the earlier. This has the same gray color because legally this was annexed by the Knesset. I forgot the year. Maybe somebody remembers the year, but I don't know, 20 years ago, whenever it was already annexed. But this territory is still officially by international law occupied territory. And then look where is it? Where do you find it? In the state of Palestine. And look at those here amongst us who have been involved in Zionism and Jewish communities know, whoa, there is no state of Palestine. Well, there is for much of the world, and at least on the internet in this place. But whatever it is, this is where it is. And when you Google Anatta, this is what you see, the state of Palestine. I'm not polemicizing with this. I'm merely presenting this, and we can talk about it afterwards. It gives you the head, who's the mayor, the Mukhtar, how many people, how many durim are we talking about? So that, that amount of durim is 11 square miles. It's not a huge place, okay? How many people? And then you get this section here that I lit up in red for us to read. Troy, would you read this for us?
Yes, sir. The part in red?
Yes, please.
Yes. Anatta is a Palestinian town in the Jerusalem governorate of the state of Palestine in the central West Bank, located 4 kilometers northeast of Jerusalem's Old City. According to the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, Anatta had a population of 16,919 in 2017. Its total land area is 3,603 dunams, of which over half now lies within the Israeli Jerusalem municipality and 1,654 in Palestinian built-up area. Since 1967, Anatta has been occupied by Israel, together with Shafat refugee camp. The village is almost surrounded by the separation barrier. cutting it off from Jerusalem and surrounding villages, except for a checkpoint in the west and a road in the northeast that gives access to the rest of the West Bank.
Thank you, Troy. And there was a picture. There we go. Here's a picture of the barrier. The barrier, which is this wall that is, I think, one of Bibi Netanyahu's. He's very proud of this as an accomplishment. This was an outcome of the Intifada and the rampant bombings that went on in the early aughts. And slowly this wall went up, which has immensely improved security for Israelis. But what you don't see from this picture, let's go back to the, yeah, what you don't see, maybe I'll show on the map afterwards, is that the people of Anata, Klaus, you mentioned, is it, what's the word? Not continuous. What was the word you used?
Contiguous.
Once again?
Contiguous.
Oh, contiguous. Thank you, with a G. There was a contiguous population from East Jerusalem, which is Arab Jerusalem, all the way through those refugee camps of Shuafat. Refugee camps meaning people that were displaced after 1948, and in many cases, Jews moved into their houses. I will mention that in many cases where Jews left Arab countries, local Arabs moved into their houses. There's a lot of that going on in the 20th century. But that's the basis for refugee camps. And even though eventually they were built up and you'd see apartment houses, they're still called refugee camps, which irks people on the right to say, well, why are you calling it? You make it sound like it's a shanty town. It's a city for all things, but it's a refugee camp because people are not living where their ancestors lived. There was a contiguous territory of population. And then this wall, based on the official boundaries of Jerusalem, came up, and in many cases, not in the case in the picture you show, but closer to where we live in Talpiot, you can see how the wall was erected right in the middle of a village, what seems to be a village, which suddenly meant that people whose children or grandchildren or parents or grandparents lived across the street or down the street, you had to travel hours to go through a checkpoint, which were closed off anytime there's problems. In other words, I understand that it was perceived as a security necessity, but there's another side to that as well, a very tragic side that I want us just to be aware of and to consider when we feel when we think about our own feelings of the occupation and what happens going forwards. I'm going to go back to the Wikipedia article just to highlight some things here, the history in ancient times. So there's a note here about pre-biblical times, and that's in ancient times, Anata stands on the site where the ancient city of Anatot once stood. The toponym may be linked to the Canaanite goddess Anat. Now, maybe because we don't have any, there was no temple to Anat. Anat was the Batzug, the wife of, or the girlfriend of, or the partner of Baal, the Canaanite god. We have Anat. We have a lot about Anat in the Ugaritic texts. And it makes sense that there's a city there. What I want to say is that from ancient times, pre-biblical, before it was deemed a priest of Adonai, Yud He Vav He, of their time. Before that, it had another religious history. And then after that, after biblical times, from rabbinic times, where we don't have anything about it, you find that there was a church there that Eusebius, the fourth century church father, mentioned, and there's ruins of a Byzantine era church in that town because it was inhabited prior to the Muslim conquest of Palestine in the 7th century. And then there are all sorts of different battles one of the things that I saw here during the Ottoman Empire in the late 16th century, the villagers paid a fixed tax of 40% on agricultural products. I don't know if that is little or a lot. It sure seems like a lot to me. So that is Muslims paying to Muslims, by the way, right? The village was destroyed in 1834 as part of inner Arab/Muslim politics. I think what I want to say is that you can't just assign all of this to religion, which people often do. In fact, you probably can't when it comes to Palestine. It's far more. It has to do with land. It has to do with power. Has to do with independence and Anatot. And this is we're just talking about Anata, right? This probably comes up. One of the reasons that moved me to present it this way today is that I think I may have mentioned I have he's not even a student of mine. He worked for me. He was the administrator, the first administrator I hired when I was the rabbi in Tel Aviv to work with me. And he just got a professor. He was just named as a professor at Tel Aviv University of Archaeology, Ido Koch. And he is in charge of a dig, which is kind of halfway between Jerusalem or the airport in Jerusalem, or actually it's not so far from the airport actually, in which they are digging a site known to be an ancient pre-biblical site or Iron Age site. And the top layer is a destroyed village, Arab village from 1948, which has been abandoned since then, but they're starting the dig with 1948. Think about that. In most cases, the digs don't start until much, 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 much earlier. Because what's interesting, right? And they're documenting everything, including they're documenting oral histories from survivors from that village that they tracked down in different places in Palestine and inside of the Green Line. To me, this is fascinating. And one could say, well, that's political. Well, at the end, everything is political, but to me, that's reality. Reality is you can't just talk about one period of time. This is everything. People say, yeah, but what about? Yeah, there's a lot of everything is what about. It's where do you start looking at the footage of this tragic movie that we're part of now? Does it start just on October 7th? Does it start with the failure of the Oslo Accords? Does it start with the Oslo Accords? Does it start in 1967? Does it start in 1948? Does it start when the first Jews came from Eastern Europe in the latter part of the 19th century? Does it start with Theodor Herzl or Zev Jabotinsky and his vision of Zionism, which said, by the way, both sides of the Jordan River? Well, where do you start? So now on one hand, if you want to talk about, you've got to start someplace, but you have to be mindful that this is so, so complex and we need so much nuance. And I'm so sad that we're still talking about this in this way, that this war, this horrible war permeates everything we do. And I'm afraid that some of you will be, at some point, will be just tired of that. You just want to study Tanakh. Just want to study the book of Joshua. Like, what the hell was he going on about this before? But this is in my mind. To me, this is Torah. Torah is where we look at our past and we try to understand where we are today and imagine what our future might look like, whether it's ourselves personally, whether it's ourselves as a community, an enlarged and widened Or HaMidbar community here, including people from different geographical locations and even different faiths, or if it's as the Jewish people, or if it's as humanity, whoever we might be. Just a few more points I want to show out, and then I will definitely leave time for questions, because there's one more step to this. There is this article on the British Mandate under Jordan. Most of its land was confiscated to create the Israeli military base at Anatot. 4 Israeli settlements and several illegal Israeli outposts were created with this land. There's a report from it's called I'm blanking on the name now. And I tried to check with one of my sources to see if this is reliable. And he said he's never heard of it. It is the Applied Research Institute of Jerusalem. And who knows? The fact that they put out a report and they have a website doesn't mean that it represents anything more. This is what they've said. This is the amounts of land, which are not huge, right? But still land that is been taken from this village, from the traditional legal boundaries of this village or territories of the village, to enlarge these West Bank settlements that are nearby. All right, lots of other interesting stuff, and then you see, of course, there's the footnotes and everything. Now, this is something else I want to show you, and this one it comes to Wikipedia. Oh. Okay, this is what a Wikipedia article looks like. You've all seen it, I hope. I definitely, even in Jewish stuff, you need to be careful what it is. Careful, meaning that you need to know that, from what aspect you're reading it. Some are objective. If you're looking for a certain Parshat HaShavua, for instance, a weekly Torah portion, you'll find the traditional understanding of things and a modern critical way of looking. It's not all encompassing, but you can find a lot of interesting things. When it comes to other things, Wikipedia is a good thing to be, but has anybody ever noticed this area up here? Article and talk? Anybody? This is the background to this is the discussion around each Wikipedia article. Has these ongoing conversations between those people in the world that fancy themselves the Wikipedia authors, experts, etc. And some of this is pretty snide. Some of this is pretty snarky. And you can see this. Sir Joseph is obviously Jewish. He has obviously, I think so. And so you've got these different kinds of things. So when it says, for instance, somebody says it should be deleted 1967, Anata has been occupied by Israel. This statement has no support by any reliable source, and it is a violation of the NIPOV. Occupied implies that some power which did not own the land seized control of it. That political point of view is contrary to the point of view that the land of Israel was given to Israel by Yud He Vav, by God. So you could see the background. I mean, you understand that is somebody who, first of all, not an Orthodox Jew, because an Orthodox Jew would not write Yahweh, would not even those. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not accepted, but it could easily be somebody who is from the fundamental side of Christianity. What I'm saying is that everybody gets to pitch in. What happens, how the dynamics, people have written, I'm sure, dissertations on this already, the dynamics of what happens, and I think Dan did some research into this. You've got anything to enlighten us about. It works itself out. It's kind of a global community thing. But what I want to say is that some things are indisputable. It's indisputable that there are ruins of a Byzantine church there that reflect when Christianity dominated the land. I think it's indisputable. I don't know what kind. I forgot. The archaeological evidence is very weak. There's not a lot that's left over, because it was a place where there was a contiguous life from biblical times onwards, built after. When people are living there, you don't do an archaeological dig. At least you shouldn't, I don't think. It's only when people are no longer living there. It's complex. It's so complex. And so from a Jewish point of view, traditional Jewish point of view, this is a city of Jeremiah. How could this be anything but? But from a Palestinian point of view, looking at it, in many ways, who's Jeremiah? That's all a myth. That Jews never lived there. Yes, Ella.
I was going to, you took the words out of my mouth. If Jeremiah lived there, Jeremiah was Jewish, so the Jews were there before the Byzantines.
Yes, of course. But who was there before the Israelites? My point was the Canaanites were there beforehand with Anat. In other words, and I think it's pretty well, even though there's no excavation of the Temple Mount, I understand the world of archaeology that it's pretty well, it's consensus that there was before, when it was before the threshing floor that David bought for resting place of the ark. it was sanctified in another way. We know that from probably everywhere in the world, where whoever comes next takes the holy spot and makes it their own. Yes, Ella.
But the Canaanites were in all of Israel. They weren't only in Anatot. They were all over the place. We took it, when Joshua came into Israel, the Canaanites were there.
Right, and
took over. So in
we
other
took over. That's exactly the point. I mean, some people, Palestinians might say, okay, you were there thousands of years ago, and then the Greeks took over, then the Romans took over, and then the Byzantines, the Christian Romans took over, and then the Muslims took over. And we've been, in the meantime, we've been living here for 800 years or 900 years. Our family can prove it.
But I would make the point that at least many people think that the origins of Israel, at least part of the origins of Israel, some of them were Canaanites, and talking about the occupation of land. So I guess
making this
Israel,
even more complicated.
right?
Making it even more complicated. Yeah. Yes, Ella.
And the whole world, for example, you can say the Indians were here before the Irish or the Jews or whoever else came.
Right. Inachinami, and that's some of the issues that we're dealing with, even here in section.
We go back.
Yeah, and what I think that's my basic point is this is nothing you haven't heard before. This is me reminding us that we need to be modest in our statements and our feelings about what is right and what is wrong, what is black and what is white. I want to thank all of you for indulging me in this particular exercise. It's part of my own catharsis to deal with the difficult time. Of course, it was so joyful to meet Keshet, who turns out to be a bit of a redhead, our ninth grandchild, and Abigail, and to see her and her family with the 3 kids of 4 years and under, right? Reminds us, Sasha and I, of when we were raising 3 girls also under 4 years and younger. It was difficult to be there on Memorial Day, difficult to be there on Independence Day. Joyous to see our daughter Debbie lead services at Kol HaNeshama, one of the most important congregations in the world, literally. I'm not exaggerating. She's a layperson. She's on the board there. She happens to be a rabbi, and she was taking over from the rabbi, who I've known since he was a teenager. Wasn't there, and she took over and ran a 2.5 hour. Can you believe 2.5 hours is their Shabbat morning service in their reform? Oh my God, good to know. 2.5 hours. Dan is smiling because until most people got to Army Bar, it was 2.5 hours on a Shabbat morning. But it was so lovely to see her and to be with her kids and to be with our daughter Noah, who's a social worker, working with youth at risk. Really, really difficult, stressful work up in Haifa with that possible war looming on the horizon, literally looming on the horizon of the mountains of the Galil. Her college, where she's finishing her master's, or university where she's finishing her master's of social work, has been abandoned or evacuated since October 7th because of the threat from Hezbollah. It's on the northern border. And to be with our daughter Yael and Itamar and Sarah and Laila in Tel Aviv. We spent less time with them because they had just been here for 10 days, but to be with them in Hostage Square and asking Yael, does she know what's going on? Does the little one Laila, does she have an idea? What do the kids think? Well, they think it's soldiers who haven't come back yet. Soldiers that haven't come back yet. I'm sorry, not Hostage Square, Kikar Dizengoff Circle, where there's a huge fountain. There's photos all around. And I think I mentioned all of our daughters, yeah. And to meet with students, to give a class at the Schechter Institute where I was ordained, and to give it in Halacha, where I was kind of ostracized from there because of my views on Jewish law, to talk about cremation and the need for rabbis to reach out to families who have chosen, for whatever reason, cremation. It was a monumental trip in many ways, yet still very, very difficult.
Question.
Ella.
How was the general population in Israel? How is their daily life? Are restaurants open? Are movies shown? Or
restaurants, movies, places people go out, people party on one hand, yet on Yom Ha'atzmaut it wasn't the way you would have remembered it. It was more of a low-key thing, more for families, for kids, kind of, carnival things, but not huge there was a concert, a big concert, but it was for the hostages, I think. Everything revolves around the hostages, the radio, TV, almost everything, except for maybe the ultra Orthodox radio that when I was in a car with just a radio. That was the last time that happened. No Sirius FM, no, and so I searched around and listened a little bit to an ultra Orthodox station, which talked about how Torah study will protect the people. And if you can't study Torah yourself, you can sponsor. If you're working, good. You should do your job in high talk, and for as little as whatever shkalim a day, you can keep an avrech, an adult Torah student in yeshiva, and that study will protect us in this kind. So everything is working as it is, but everybody's talking about the whole time. All radio, TV, newspapers, there's always a story about somebody who was a hostage, somebody who died, somebody who. It's everywhere. There's flags a lot more than you would usually see. Not maybe I don't think it was just because of Yom Ha'atzmaut. Um, yeah, people go. The airport was crowded on my way out. It was very crowded. People need to take a break. A lot of people need to take a break. Our daughter and son-in-law said how important it was for them, how much they realized once they were back, how much it was important to take the break by being here. So what is not going on, Ella, and this is I didn't realize, is so much business with abroad. I have a friend who's a international tax lawyer. He says most of his business has disappeared for now because foreign companies and Moody's that gives the economic grade downgraded Israel again. So even before the war, with the demonstrations against it or the possibility of that judicial reform thing that they were trying to push through, the Israel's ratings went down because the war went down even more. There's a lot of people in the tourist industry who are not at work. The hotels have fared not so bad because they still have evacuees in them. I was at a nice hotel in Tel Aviv for one night, and the dining hall was packed with all Israelis that are still from other places. And this was a pretty fancy hotel. It wasn't, so a lot. Just things are just so much different. Most businesses seem to be open. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, friends? It's good to be back. Good to be back. We're going to begin our Thursday study with Dr. Stephen Kinney's, Dr. Father Stephen Kinney's on this time the Gospel according to John. I'm excited. I'm anxious. I'm a little intimidated. It's a complex book, and I have no experience yet. And there's a lot I need to read before we begin next Thursday, or we'll be reading as we do this, and we'll go back to our regular time slot of 10. As far as the in-person class with Reverend Dan, I haven't talked to him since I've been back. I think we have a meeting together the next week. And they're going away now for a month or two or something. We'll have to see about that. Maybe I'll do something on my own in person during that case. And I'd like to talk to Pastor Jane about doing something in the summer together with their congregation. We've got online Kabbalat Shabbat. I said mistakenly to one or two people that it would be in person this week. It's not. It's online this week. And it will be in person next Friday. And we are in person Shavuot morning, 10:30 at our house. But please, please, please RSVP so we know how many blintzes Richard has to make. Okay?
Is the Thursday class online with the
yes. Yeah. Online and archived.
So you have to sign up for it?
Yes, everything. You got to sign up for these things. Please don't let me know, folks, because it's an automated kind of a thing. You could let me it's one more added thing to do, and I'm still playing catch up. Want to thank Madalena for taking care of the ship while I was away, and we continue to pray for the health of her father, Jesus, who is going through a really difficult time in Mexico City. And we will mourn publicly together as community Gary Miller's death passing and Avi Showalter's passing, and we'll get that information out as soon as we have it, as soon as hasn't been set yet. Neither memorial service has been set yet. Okay? And hopefully Bill is smiling, watching us from above in his heavenly abode, saying, Now I have a question, Rabbi. I wanted to ask something. So when you find it out, Rita Claire, you let me know what the question was, okay? Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.